Hello there, very good evening and a warm welcome to the news live on Rupavahini Channel I. I'm Sharon Mascarenhas.
I'm Movin Hettiarachi and here are today's headlines. 563 COVID-19 patients recovered, increasing the total number up to 7,186. A decision will be taken to introduce corona antigen test to Sri Lanka. Government to allocate 7.3 billion rupees to provide relief for people who are undergoing quarantine process. President provides a solution for key issues in Middenia and Katuana areas. GCE A-level examinations successfully concluded amidst challenges. Raids are underway to nab culprits who are selling rice at very high prices. Joe Biden on the verge of US presidency.
On to the stories in detail now, starting off with local news. The Health Ministry says that the number of totally recovered COVID-19 cases has been risen up to 7,186. 563 COVID-19 patients left hospitals throughout the country. 2,904 COVID-19 patients were fully recovered during the past 7 days. The largest number of them, 765, were discharged from hospitals yesterday. This is the highest number of recoveries reported within a day. 3,200 cases connected to the Divulapitia COVID cluster were also recovered up to date. Another 320 fully recovered patients left the Poonani Special COVID-19 Centre today. They are residents of the Western Province. Meanwhile, there were 213 new COVID cases identified today, and health authorities said all of these cases are connected to the Paliagoda Fish Market COVID cluster. A total number of 11,316 PCR tests were conducted today. Up to now, 568,774 PCR tests have been conducted in the country to identify COVID-19 infected patients. Meanwhile, today, the total number of infections reported from a toy factory in Wattala have risen up to 115. 66 new cases were identified yesterday from the factory. The officer in charge of the Ragama police station was reportedly infected with COVID-19. This was revealed following a PCR test conducted at the Ragama hospital. 20 children who were infected with COVID-19 are now receiving treatment at the Lady Ridgeway Hospital in Colombo. 12 mothers were also infected. The director of the Lady Ridgeway Hospital said a doctor was also among the newly identified COVID cases. Meanwhile, COVID-19 cases identified from the Colombo fort has risen up to 67. 15 workers of the Colombo dockyard, 2 customs officers and 15 from Ports Authority are among them. The government has decided to provide a relief period to pay traffic fine under the present situation. Postmaster General Ranjit Aryaratne says the recommendation for the relief made by the Inspector General of Police was approved by the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance.
Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaravira says that steps have been taken to introduce COVID-19 antigen tests to Sri Lanka. He said the test methods are approved by the World Health Organization.
The WHO has recommended antigen-based rapid diagnostic test also to identify COVID-19 cases in addition to the PCR testing. At the moment that this testing is now that we are validating in our country to see whether this is a suitable test for us, as well as if it is suitable, which population groups that we can apply this test and identify the cases. And also expert team is now reviewing the usage criteria for this test, and we hope that these reports will be available by the end of this week. We hope that we will be able to utilize this test very soon in our country.
Meanwhile, the spokesman of the Health Ministry, Dr. Jairuwan Bandara, instructs the general public to adhere to recommended health guidelines to live safely without the threat of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And when you enter to your house, you should arrange a separate place to keep your clothes in soap, water, and you have to wash your full body before you enter the house. If you touch your face mask frequently from the outside, you will get the infection which has touched your face mask outside into your fingers, and you will touch everywhere with the infected hand. So you should avoid touching of your face mask on its outside. You should not take your shoes or slippers into your house, because if the infection has been there on the floor wherever you walk, you will carry that infection into your house. Recently we noticed the elder population who were in your house was affected and died in the same premises without seeking for medical attention. All the people in this country, if they have any kind of ailment, they can go to their nearest hospital. The hospital staff is ready to take you up and treat you for any kind of infection or any kind of ailment that you are having. It is not a good decision to stay at home and bear your pains and ailments without seeking for medication, especially the elder population. Those people died at home or in houses are not the people who brought that infection, COVID-19, into your house. So your parents and adult population was affected because of the misbehavior or unhealthy behavior of the breadwinners or the people who are going out of your house has brought that infection into the house.
Something that changes your life story. Litro Gas.
The Mathugama New Colony, which was previously declared as an isolated area, has been released from today. However, quarantine curfew has been still enforced in many areas. A total of 2,550 quarantine curfew law violators have been taken into police custody so far. The quarantine curfew has been imposed in 110 police divisions in Kuliapitiya, Ahaligoda and Kurunagala Municipal Council jurisdictions. In addition, Giriolla, Mavanalla and Hemathagama police divisions are further isolated. The police say roadblocks have been erected to restrict the travel within curfew-enforced areas. The Government Medical Officers Association says that curfew can be lifted following consideration of prevailing situation in the affected areas. Meanwhile, police have launched a public awareness program related to wearing face masks and implementation of other health guidelines. Traders of Narayanpitiya Economic Centre were subjected to PCR tests, and it was revealed that none of them were infected with COVID-19. Therefore, steps have been taken to reopen retailing trading activities of the Economic Centre, which has been limited only for a wholesale trading earlier.
And to bring you an update on the COVID-19 related stories overseas, a World Health Organization-led scheme to supply COVID-19 drugs to poor countries is betting on experimental monoclonal antibody treatments and steroids, but is shunning Gilead's of remdesivir blockbuster therapy, an internal document shows.
Remdesivir, the antiviral that's been authorised in dozens of countries around the world to treat COVID-19, has been shunned by a World Health Organization-led program to supply COVID-19 drugs to poor countries. The WHO draft document, seen by Reuters and dated October 30, says the priorities are to secure what are called monoclonal antibodies. That is, manufactured copies of the antibodies human bodies create to fight infections. They're looking to secure these in a tight market and also to boost purchases and distribution of cheap steroid dexamethasone, which it has already booked nearly 3 million courses of treatment for poorer countries. The paper does not list remdesivir among priority drugs, which is a significant omission as it's the only other medication alongside dexamethasone approved across the world for treating COVID-19. Remdesivir's developer, Gilead, said the WHO scheme had not funded its COVID-19 trials and had never approached the firm for the possible inclusion of the drug in its portfolio. The drug supply scheme is co-led by the Wellcome Trust charity and Unitaid, a health partnership hosted by the WHO. Unitaid confirmed the scheme had not procured or funded remdesivir, and it did not comment on whether it may buy the drug in future or why it did not appear among priority treatments. Despite its use, preliminary findings of a major WHO-sponsored trial revealed in October that the antiviral had little or no benefit for COVID-19 patients. The program urgently needs $6.1 billion, $750 million of that by February.
England spent its first day back under lockdown yesterday, and Greece is set to follow suit. It has ordered strict 3-week nationwide restrictions to help contain the resurgence of COVID-19 cases. It's second this year after a sharp increase in infections this week.
Purple, foggy skies marked England's first day of a new month-long coronavirus lockdown Thursday. The streets looked very different from the hustle and bustle seen the night before, as Brits flocked to enjoy a final night out in pubs and restaurants before their stint indoors. Britain's virus death toll is the highest in Europe. It is also grappling with more than 20,000 new cases a day. Finance Minister Rishi Sunak announced fresh government support in an attempt to slow a surge in unemployment, including an extension to its furlough programme. Many other European nations are in the midst of nationwide lockdowns, and Greece is set to join them next. It ordered a 3-week nationwide lockdown on Thursday to help contain a resurgence of cases. It's second this year after a spike in infections this week. Under the new restrictions, which will take effect from Saturday, retail businesses will be shut with the exception of supermarkets and pharmacies. Greeks will need a permit to venture outdoors at allocated times, and though primary schools will stay open, high schools will shut. Meanwhile, in the French capital, delivery and takeaway services for prepared food and alcohol will be banned between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. local time from Friday. Authorities say that the sale and consumption of alcoholic drinks in public spaces would be banned at night too.
Meanwhile, the coronavirus cases in the United States surged by at least 120,276 on yesterday, according to Reuters tally, the second consecutive daily record rise. The new cases have been accompanied by a steep rise in hospital admissions.
For a second straight day, the United States reported a record increase in coronavirus cases. There were 120,000 new infections on Thursday, according to a Reuters tally, as the outbreak spread in every region. 20 of the 50 states reported record one-day increases on Thursday, with the Midwest badly affected in particular. The new infections have been accompanied by a steep increase in hospital admissions, and many are struggling to cope. North Dakota reported only 8 free intensive care beds in the entire state on Thursday. There are more than 52,000 people in hospital with COVID-19, and the US is now averaging 850 deaths a day. Compare that to a month ago, when it was 700. Some cities and states have announced new measures such as curfews and reduced gathering sizes in an attempt to curb the transmission rate. But there has been no action at the federal level.
You're watching the news on Rupavahini, and we take a look at more local news now. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa inspected the Katuvana Pradesh Sabha building this evening. He instructed to provide necessary facilities and provided solutions for some long-standing problems related to the Pradesh Sabha. Katuvana Pradesh Sabha building has so many lapses, and therefore the functions of the Pradesh Sabha are now being carried out from Midaniya sub-office. The meeting of the Pradesh Sabha is also shifted to the sub-office building. The president instructed to construct a new building to Katuvana Pradesh Sabha after inspecting the difficulties faced by the general public and the staff members. The Ranaviru Uyana Children's Playground and walking path near the Middaniya tank were declared open by the President. The facilities were constructed under the patronage of the Murugasyaye Nyanisar Foundation. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa also instructed the ministers to solve the drinking water issue of the area. He also instructed to look into the problems of the hospital in the area and to convert Middaniya Mahavidyalaya to a national school. Minister Chamal Rajapaksa and provincial politicians also participated to inspect the tour.
The government has provided 7.3 billion rupees to district secretariats to provide for relief for people who are undergoing the quarantine process. Accordingly, a family under quarantine process will receive a food and essential commodities container worth of 10,000 rupees. At the same time, 5,000 rupees relief package is also being provided to low-income families in the Western Province, which is under quarantine curfew. The government has allocated 2,721 million rupees to provide low-income families relief package in the Gampaha district. 2,333 million rupees for Colombo district and 1,310 million rupees for Kalutara district have also been allocated for this purpose. 469 million rupees were allocated to provide relief for people in Kurunegala district. 128 million rupees were allocated for Batticaloa district, and the government says these relief packages have been provided to families under quarantine process and low-income families. 6.9 billion rupees have been allocated for the whole relief program up till now.
Welcome back to the news. The government has commenced raids to nab traders who are not selling rice according to the price control regulations. Minister of Agriculture Mahindananda Alutgamage said that stern actions will be taken against the culprits. The government recently imposed a maximum rate on the selling price of rice for producers and mill owners. The relevant gazette notification was issued by the Consumer Affairs Authority. The maximum price of 1 kilogram of white, red, Kakulu Samba is fixed at 94 rupees. The maximum price rate of 1 kilogram of boiled white and red nadu is 92 rupees. The maximum price rate of 1 kilogram of white or red Kakulu price is at 89 rupees. Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage says the Paddy Marketing Board has taken steps to purchase 300,000 metric tons of paddy during the next cultivation season.
Meanwhile, the preparation of the sacred Katina robe, also known as Katina Chivaraya, for the state Katina Puja ceremony has reached its final stages. The ceremony will be held at this historic Somavati sacred site. Katina robe is scheduled to be taken to Somavati temple in a procession from the Bisopura in Madiragiriya tomorrow. In accordance to a tradition prevailed since the times of Asian kings, a Katina robe made specially out of cotton thread and dipped in pandu color before offered to the Mahasangha. Recalling the history, the villagers in Madiragiriya Bisopura area started preparing the Katina robe from the 26th of October by using cotton and handloom machines. The robe is scheduled to be taken to Somavati sacred site in a procession tomorrow. During the state Katina Puja ceremony, the robe will be offered to the Mahasangha, and on the following day, the sacred robe will be dipped in pandu color by using local raw materials. This is the first Katina Puja ceremony that is to be held under state patronage after the era of King Parakramabahu II.
GC Advanced Level Examination was concluded today. Education Minister Professor G.L. Piris praised the contribution made by examiners and candidates amidst tough challenges. He made those remarks at a media briefing held in Colombo this morning. 362,824 candidates sat for this year's GC Advanced Level Examination at 2,648 examination centres. The examination was commenced on the 12th of October. 27 COVID-19 infected students also sat for this year's examination. It is significant that necessary facilities were provided for the candidates who are undergoing quarantine process at several quarantine centres. That's a look at local news. Stay with us. Foreign news is coming up next. And we take a look at foreign news now. Hurricane Eta unleashed torrential rains and catastrophic flooding on the Central America on yesterday, with fatalities sharply rising due to mudslides and rivers flooding.
Swaths of the Central American coast were underwater on Thursday after Storm Eta unleashed torrential rains and catastrophic flooding. In Honduras, cars sat almost submerged and mudslides have buried homes. Families waded waist-high through flooded streets. In the country's rural area of Pimienta, homes were left underwater and residents were cut off by rising floodwaters. Ovidio Vasquez was one of the residents devastated by the storm.
Eta has been very painful. The flooding happened so quickly. We couldn't believe it. We were sleeping at midnight when we had to race out just like this, nothing more. It was hard for us to open the door because it was filled with water.
More than 70 people have died from Eta's fury so far. The storm first made landfall in Nicaragua Tuesday as a Category 4 hurricane. Winds reached speeds of 150 miles per hour. The storm has weakened since then, but continued to wreak havoc in neighboring countries along the Atlantic coast. By Thursday, several people have been reported dead and missing in Costa Rica and Panama. Guatemala's disaster relief agency said some 15 homes were covered by mudslides, possibly affecting around 75 people. And in Honduras, President Juan Orlando Hernandez deployed speedboats and helicopters to rescue residents in areas still inaccessible by road. Eta was moving toward the Caribbean overnight, according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center. The storm is forecast to return to sea and regain momentum as a tropical storm, possibly reaching the Cayman Islands, Cuba, and southern Florida in the coming days.
That's it for tonight's English News Update. Thank you for joining us. Good night.